Councilmembers Cashman, Ortega, and Torres, would you please read Proclamation 22-0218, please?
Thank you, Madam President. Proclamation number 22-0218. Whereas Larry was born in Pueblo, Colorado, to Aubrey and Harriet Ambrose in 1945. Aubrey owned two businesses, an Army-Navy surplus store and a shoe store. And whereas Larry graduated from Pueblo Central High, attended CU Boulder with a marketing major, and attended UCLA, obtaining a business and arts degree in 1968, being the first person in the country to get a degree in arts administration. And whereas Larry began his career as an impresario of the arts at the age of 9, promoting the fledgling piano talents of his friend Fred Wanger in a local talent contest. Fred went on to become a noted pianist. He later managed a number of bands, including Ash Grove Club, LA's #1 place for live music, and managed AAA band, musicians originally from San Francisco, living in a commune in Walsenburg, and recognized the remarkable talent of a new friend he had made, a Denver woman who had never performed in public but had a great voice. He urged her to sit in at one of his band rehearsals and give it a try. The audition didn't go particularly well, but Larry urged her not to give up. That young woman, Lainey Garrett, has become one of Denver's truly legendary entertainers, largely due to Larry's early encouragement. And whereas Larry met Jane Parker in 1972 when she showed up at the Rio Grande Saloon on Santa Fe Drive looking for good, funky music. She worked for the Denver Symphony. Jane ran into Larry again at a bar in Colorado and Evans 4 years later where his band was playing, and she said she remembered his eyes. Larry called her the next day to ask her out to listen to music. And whereas Jane and Larry started seeing each other regularly, and she moved into his house and became a part of the commune, she told Larry she wanted to get married, and he said, okay. They eloped to Reno, Nevada, along with their friends, Judy and Jack Wortel, who also tied the knot. The Ambroses traveled to Europe and Mexico, went skiing, and loved kite flying. Their home was always filled with friends, food, joy, and love, just like his family home in Pueblo. And whereas from 1996 to 2014, Larry commuted back and forth to Pueblo to take care of his mother and to manage the family business. While there, he was hired as the manager of the Pueblo Convention Center and turned it into a vibrant place with concerts and artists while still managing the family business. And
whereas at the age of 59, Larry went to DU Law School, earning a JD, but was too busy with multiple jobs to study to pass the bar. And whereas Larry was involved in the formation and advocacy of Denver neighborhood groups since 1973, when he and Jane started one of Denver's first RNOs, Northwest Neighbors. And whereas in early 1980s, Larry and Frank Quintana, former DFD captain, co-founded the Jefferson Highland Sunnyside Neighborhood Association. He and Jane helped pioneer the Low-High Business District on 15th Street, where they both had businesses in 2004, and were founding members of Sloan's Lake Neighborhood Association, where Larry served as vice president until his passing. And whereas, as community relations director of the Auraria campus, he wrote the policies on community use of space, and more notably, saved the Golda Meir House from the wrecking ball when it was moved to the 9th Street Historic District in 1988, where it was restored and named to the National Register of Historic Places. And whereas Larry was a member of the Platte Area Reclamation Committee, where he advocated for a major city park in the Central Platte Valley, and was subsequently appointed by Mayor McNichols as the neighborhood representative to the Central Platte Valley Planning Committee. And whereas Larry and Gertie Grant co-chaired a citywide building height control initiative that was on the ballot in 1985. He was a leader in saving historic buildings in the Highlands and getting power lines buried in Highland Square Business District. He worked with Councilman Sal Carpio in creating the Viking Park entryway into Northwest Denver and establishing Denver's system of dog parks.
And whereas Larry served on numerous city planning committees and task force groups, he served on the INC board for 9 years as secretary, vice president, and president. He initiated the creation of INC's website, logo, and branding. He established a record of activism and advocacy through INC resolutions to Denver city government officials and initiated, at the behest of Kathleen Wells, the creation of platforms for INC's committees, starting with parks. He formed the INC Parks Designation Committee and appointed its first members. He initiated the silent auction at INC annual awards dinners, and with help from Jane Lorimer, taking the dinners to a new level of success, taking the dinners to a new level of success. Larry held executive committee retreats for the first time that included building INC's current mission statement to advocate for Denver citizens by bringing together, informing, and empowering Denver neighborhood organizations to actively engage in addressing city issues. In 2021, INC gave Larry the Lifetime Achievement Award for his work in Denver communities. And whereas Larry recently served as executive director for the Southwest Improvement Council, even through the time he was sick. SWIC's purpose is to improve living conditions for its residents through civic engagement, health, and human service programs, and affordable housing. And whereas Larry enjoyed a life well lived with music, joy, purpose, meaning, connection, friendship, and love. If you were a friend of Larry's, you were a friend for life. He indeed spent a lifetime of commitment to address the betterment of Denver's neighborhoods. And whereas Larry is survived by a wife of 48 years, Jane Parker Ambrose, cousin David and Laura Hausman of Corpus Christi, Texas, and many, many other cousins. He was laid to rest on Tuesday, February 1, 2022, at Emmanuel Cemetery within Fairmount Cemetery. Now, therefore, let it be proclaimed by the Council of the City and County of Denver that Section 1, that the Council of the City and County of Denver honors Larry Ambrose for his countless contributions to our community and declares today, February 14, 2022, to be Larry Ambrose Day and honors his memory. Section 2, that the Clerk of the City and County of Denver shall attest and affix the seal of the City and County of Denver to this proclamation, and a copy be provided to his wife, Jane Parker Ambrose.
Thank you, Councilmember Cashman. Your motion to adopt?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I move that Proclamation 22-0218 be adopted.
Thank you. We have it moved, and the second. Comments by members of council. Councilmember Cashman?
I will cede the floor to Pro Tem Torres, as this is actually a district representative.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here, Jane.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much to Council Members Cashman and Ortega for co-sponsoring on this proclamation. I think we were all pretty devastated to hear about Larry's passing, and really remember him, me personally, strongly as just such a dedicated neighborhood advocate. So I really do thank him, thank you for your dedication in that space, and know that he'll be missed.
Oh, yeah, he will be missed.
And we've got a few more people in the queue
Okay.
that want to speak, and so we're going to vote.
I'm going to
then.
make it real quick.
But we've got to go ahead and vote first, and so if you
Okay.
want to,
All right,
if you
thank
want to wait for just a few moments here, we've got. I thought I had seen Councilwoman
Yes.
Ortega. Were you
Yes.
in the queue? And then
Yes.
Okay, we'll go ahead and Councilwoman Ortega, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Larry is someone who was known by many people across this city. He wasn't just an activist in Northwest Denver. His involvement with INC was, reflective of those citywide relationships that he had with so many people across this city. And Larry had strong opinions about a lot of things, and not everybody agreed with Larry's approach or his position on things, but he stood up for what he believed in and would speak out on those issues. And as you can see, some of the changes that have happened within INC as one of those areas where he had huge impact. I had an opportunity to get to know Larry even going back to when I worked for Sal Carpio and his work in the Central Platte Valley. And he, again, reflected the input of neighborhoods into what was going to happen in the Central Platte Valley. And as you all know, we've got 3 parks down there. And those parks initially were identified to serve Northwest Denver in District 9 that was park deficient, but they also serve the many people that now live in the Central Platte Valley. I want to acknowledge that we have Tim Sandos, former councilman, at-large councilman in the audience, who served with Larry on the Southwest Improvement Council board, where Larry served up until just a couple weeks before he passed. He was still working from home, even though he was in hospice, trying to do work for the Southwest Improvement Council. That alone shows you the dedication and commitment that he had to our communities. And Jane, my condolences for the loss on Larry. He was just an incredible individual that many people loved. And I think the statement in here that if you were a friend of Larry's, you were a friend for life, really kind of says it all as well. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilmember Ortega. And we've got Councilman Cashman. You're up next, and then we've got a few folks after you. So go ahead, sir.
Thank you, and I'll try to make it easy on you, Jane, and make my comments kind of quick. I actually heard the Ambrose name first when I learned of Jane and her work with her kite project, and when I was a journalist and would cover the work that she was doing, and then became acquainted with this guy, Larry. And holy cow, you want to talk about a force of nature. And I would just always felt blessed because I never got on Larry's wrong side. He was just one. There were some folks who really didn't like his approach because when he believed in what he believed in, he did not suffer fools well. And if he thought you were a fool, you were liable to get both barrels. He did incredible work for our neighborhoods. For me, I think most prominently his work with INC. He really changed the tenor. For those who don't know INC, it's Inter-Neighborhood Cooperation, a citywide coalition of some 100 neighborhood groups up and down over the years. And Larry did just phenomenal work in really activating that voice. But the thing that really caught me was, and it was mentioned in the proclamation, a lot of folks know Lanny Garrett, an entertainment legend in Denver for decades. And you would just assume she kind of sprung from the earth all by herself. But she put a Facebook post the day after Larry passed, first starting off saying she was absolutely devastated, and then telling that story where she had met him. They were friends, and he came to pick her up to take her to hear a music group, and as he walked into her house, he heard her singing in the kitchen and said, geez, you really got a great voice. You ought to come try out with our band. And she went and tried out with the band, and it was a total flop. And she went home thinking, well, I'll just, keep singing in the kitchen. And Larry did what he does with people, or what he did with people, urging them to be their best selves, and kept pushing Lanny, and she picked herself up and got back into the game. And like I said, she's just one of Denver's entertainment legends. And so that really caught me. Was something I had no clue about. So I will just add, my condolences and for not just Jane, but for all of Denver. We've lost an important voice among people who really care about this city. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilmember Cashman. And we have Councilmember Sandoval and then Flynn in the queue. Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Madam President. Sorry for your loss, Jane. I too met Jane first before Larry. I had heard of Larry from growing up in the north side, but I got to know Jane very well, and we spent time together in a program. And then I found out Larry was her husband, but I knew her from the kite store downtown at the Pavilion. I don't think it was called the Pavilion, but downtown. And so I remember when my father passed away, Larry and my dad, Paul Sandoval, did not always see eye to eye, but he gave his condolences. And what he said to me was my dad was thought-provoking. And I will say the same for Larry. He was very thought-provoking. And when he made a case, he made it, and he knew all of the facts about it, and he stuck to it. And that is something that I have always thought about with Larry and Jane, is how thought-provoking they have been and how great stewards of Sloan's Lake that they have been. They faced Sloan's Lake and they've advocated for things at the lake, and that will be greatly missed. And I also believe that we stand on the shoulders of those who've come before us, and Larry definitely is one of those people.
Thank you, Councilmember Sandoval. Councilmember Flynn.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, I met Larry before I met Jane. In fact, when I met Larry about 40 years ago, when I came to Denver to work at the Rocky Mountain News, Larry was one of those people that almost immediately came into the circle of folks you needed to talk to. Larry and Dean Punkay down at Auraria, when Larry was working community relations at the Auraria campus, and we would go to lunch over at Heroes Place over by East High School and talk about development, talk about land use, talk about neighborhoods. We talked about it so much, and he was so intense, Jane, I apologize, I didn't even know he was married until I heard about your One Sky, One World program. And it's true what was said in the proclamation that I think Councilman Cashman read in that portion, that if you were a friend forever. And as we moved along over the 4 decades that I knew Larry, we had moments of great agreement and moments of great disagreement, but we always had, at least I believe we had moments of friendship, and it was a pleasure to know him. We will miss his creativity and his intelligence and his alternative way of looking at things. He was instrumental to me many times here testifying. In fact, he was instrumental in impacting one of my votes on a zoning issue in Sloan's Lake years ago that I recall. And so we will miss him. And I recall also that he was so well known that in 2015, even though he wasn't on the ballot, he got 2,000 write-in votes for mayor. I don't know if many people realize, it's pretty hard to get a write-in vote, but just with a 2-week social media campaign, Larry got 2,000 plus write-in votes. And I think that's quite remarkable and alone says a lot. So you have my condolences, Jane. We will miss him. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilmember Flynn. And we definitely send our sincere condolences to you, Jane, on behalf of City Council, the city family, for your great loss. He was a great man and did many things on behalf of our city, and you two were amazing partners together, and so we send you our support and prayers in this time. Madam Secretary, roll call.
Cedarbacca,
Aye.
Cashman,
Aye.
Kinich, Ortega,
Aye.
Sandoval, Sawyer,
Aye.
Torres,
Aye.
Black,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Flynn,
Aye.
Herndon,
Aye.
Hines.
Aye.
Madam President.
Aye. Madam Secretary, close the voting and announce the results.
13 ayes.
13 ayes. Proclamation 22-0218 has been adopted. Councilmember Cashman, we'll go ahead and allow you to bring up our speaker this evening.
Yes, a woman with great patience. Thank you for giving us the time to honor your husband. I'd like to call up Larry's wife, Jane Parker Ambrose.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know, don't get me crying, okay? I just humbly accept this proclamation. It's going to be really hard not to have Larry around. I'm so sorry. But, you know, it's the grieving process. It's so interesting what the different stages that you go through. And one of the things that I wanted to share with you is when we saved the Golden Meyer house. I remember we were up at 3 o'clock in the morning waving flags so that the truck could carry the house down to historic 9th Street at Auraria. And one of the beautiful things about Larry is that he could decipher and pull things out of people and what their perspective was. And with Golda, he called her a drop-in instead of a dropout, because this was the teens, and Denver was actually being called like the new Paris of the world. It was a convalescent center where people were coming in and working on their health because of the climate. And so Golda's sister, Shayna, was living here in Denver. And she called Shayna and she says, Dad is trying to marry me off to a 32-year-old man. And I want to go to school. I want education. I don't want to be married to this 32-year-old man. Shayna says, I have no money to send you. And she said, don't worry about it. And she taught English on the streets of Milwaukee for 10 cents. And she raised that money to create her passage on a train from Milwaukee to Denver. And she walked through our Union Station and lived with her sister. So she would stay up at night washing teacups of all these intellectuals and artists that would gather together. And they were forming the beginning of Israel. And that, to me, speaks volumes about, don't get me started, okay? But anyway, and so Larry fought for that, to bring attention. I mean, Denver should be so proud of the fact that Golda Meir lived here. And he brought Shayna's daughter into Denver years later when he was working at Auraria, Judy, a beautiful, beautiful woman. But that's history that we should not forget. And from there, he went on, he met a man by the name of Wally, what was last name? I forget Wally's last name, but he was a retired principal, and he actually was a classmate of Golda Meir's at North High. And so Larry and he started the North High Foundation, and then they started Viking Park, which sits at Spear and Federal. And the reason why they cleared that little triangular area is to enhance the entrance to Northwest Denver so that people could see North High, they could see the Mason Center, they could see St. Anthony's Church, and really welcome people into this incredible community. And those are the things that we need to acknowledge, keep in mind. And I mean, I could go on, but you know, I thank you so much, and I humbly accept this proclamation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jane. And I believe we had Tim Sandos, who is also going to say a few words as well with that longtime relationship, and I'm sure is at large as well.
Thank you very much, Madam President, members of council. My name is Tim Sandos. I'm a board member of the Southwest Improvement Council, also known as SWIG, that Larry Ambrose had been executive director of just prior to his death. As everyone said, Larry kept on working regardless of how many times we asked him to stop because we knew of his health, but he was so driven a person. He wanted to make sure that he could accomplish the things that he had set out to do for Southwest Denver. He was an amazing advocate for, as was said earlier by council, citizens throughout Denver, and Southwest Denver was no different. He was dramatically involved in the community, in particular for seniors, for food, for health, for housing. Larry, I thought one of the most amazing things about him was his intellect and his vision and his foresight. And as was mentioned, he was very determined once he had done his research, understood where he was at, and would be very strong on his positions, much to the chagrin of a number of elected officials through the years that we all knew, including myself. But one thing about Larry, as Councilman Cashman had pointed out, he was so strong in his position that people would think he disliked them. He never disliked anybody. He disagreed with your position, but he still respected and admired people for standing up and for delivering theirs. And with Southwest Denver as well as Northwest Denver, where I first met Larry 1987 when we were preparing for the 1989 bond election, Citizens for Denver's Future, that had 92 members that Larry was a part of. Again, his vision, his intellect, his ability to work was what was so strong about him and what was so great. What a lot of people may not remember is Larry also ran for city council at large in 1989 against me. And we got to know each other, as you all know, when you're on the stump. You're with people, you see them, you talk to them. And Larry and I developed a great relationship. And I just really admired him and thought, dang it, he should be on city council at some time, just not in my seat. But he was a tremendous individual. We are sorely going to miss his leadership and his commitment at the Southwest Improvement Council. And I'm going to miss him personally for just his humor, his intellect, and everything that he brought to the table. Larry was one of a kind, and we will always think of him and remember him in Southwest Denver, too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the memories that you shared, and again, our sincere condolences and support to you, Jane, as you move into this next chapter.